About the certification challenge. In this week, we're going to break apart the questions that are associated with the exams, and I want you to feel as comfortable as I possibly can with this idea of taking the exam. Remember, well, it goes without saying, but taking the exam is often nerve wracking. At least it is for me. And that's the feedback I hear across the board everywhere else. So that's what we're going to be talking about here today. Now, I will say, I'm sorry I started a minute or two late. I have this weird problem. And if anybody has advice on this, I am more than appreciative of your advice. OBS is what I use to take the camera input through my computer. And today I started plenty early, but OBS just hangs on me. It just literally will not start up. I have to go delete OBS, all the preferences out on my Mac, clean them out, and then I can start back over. But yeah, it was kind of thing after thing here today. So unfortunately, that's why I was a minute or two late. But we're going to get started here in just a minute. I am excited to see everyone on here. Welcome. We got a hedgehog. Oh, that works well with an otter. I like that. Goran, good to see you on here. I think it's been a while. If I remember, if that's the same person I am remembering, welcome back. It's good to see you here. Lucas, repertoires, good. Pavel, come on in, everyone. We are going to be getting started and talking about certification questions today. And we are also going to be working through what does it take to answer those. Again, my goal is that this test that you're going to be taking here in the next month or two will be as easy as possible for you to absolutely master. So that's what we're going after. And it would be my pleasure to facilitate that here for you all. As we are getting started, maybe those of you that are here, I see some people that are here, but I, for some reason, Restream, what I use for this streaming out to Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube, it doesn't give me any information about those that are on LinkedIn. So if everyone who's watching this, just pop in with where you're from, and that is always appreciated. I look forward to continuing the conversation today. So again, welcome. I'm excited about this today. To be honest, you might say I'm slightly flustered. It was literally 1 minute before this started that OBS actually opened up for me. So I'm just kind of decompressing here for a second. But I'm excited to be here with you all. All right, let's jump in and start talking about our topic of the day, which is questions. Unfortunately, last week I got mixed up with what we're going to be talking about. And so 2 weeks ago, I guess. So we're going to talk about questions here today. So first question for you in this idea of questions is, have you had your morning coffee? We could extrapolate that out to a morning beverage, because I don't think that everyone all over the world is coffee drinkers. I think Europe is. I know US is, the United States. But for those of you that are in India, I am curious to know what your beverage of choice is in the morning. So feel free to pop that in here. All right, continuing on, let's make sure that you have signed up for this challenge. All we need is basically your name and your email. This qualifies you to be able to then submit your scores. Now, remember how this is going to work is you sign up for the challenge, and we let people sign up the whole challenge that's going on. It's fine. So you sign up for the challenge, but then when you pass your test, you need to submit your scores to us. And on that page, I think we don't have it up quite yet, but we will have a form for you to enter your scores in, which then you get. And again, time-wise today, I was fighting OBS. I didn't have a chance. We're going to give you a badge. Every one of you that passes, you get a badge, as well as those of you that pass, you also get a t-shirt as well. So all that to say, it's going to be, it's great. And I'm really excited to put these things out. Call it motivation. But at the end of the day, the biggest reward that I could never match is the fact that you get certified. And the big value that comes out of getting certified is that no matter who looks at your LinkedIn profile, no matter who talks to you and finds out that you're certified, they're going to know that you have at least X level of proficiency. You pass this exam. Now, whether that's professional, expert, or master, they know that you have this proficiency. And that sets you apart. For those of you, or maybe I would say those of your friends that have not yet taken this opportunity, and they're like, well, the certification, I know everything that's covered in there, and it's really not that worthwhile to me to get certified. My pushback there is, great, know the stuff, and who am I to disagree with that? I would have no way of knowing, but you have no way to prove this outside of sitting through multiple technical interviews, which maybe you'll ace, and fantastic. But at the end of the day, you have to have the certification on your record. It's a matter of why not. And that really comes down to the underlying question that I pose for everybody is, why not get it? At the end of the day, there's would be some reasons, but they kind of come back to, and I want to be gracious in how I say this, but the way it can look to a recruiter or somebody who is looking to hire you is it can kind of come off as not as a lackadaisical approach to life or work. Certification, getting that proves your energy, your commitment, your buy-in on this given platform. And that's why I believe one of the reasons it is so valuable. That's right. Absolutely. And so that's Lucas said it very well, and I'm going to throw it up on the screen here. So this is this is absolutely correct. We want to. It shows that you have adopted. You have put in the effort it takes to get these certifications, and so we just have to do it. I really consider it non-optional. We at SwiftOtter, let me put it this way: we at SwiftOtter hire and we build Adobe Commerce websites, etc. Like that's most of what I spend my days working with in one form or another. At the end of the day, in our hiring process, if I meet somebody who is not yet certified, I'll continue the interview, and we have the capability of saying, okay, well, let's go get you certified, and then we can continue the conversation. But at the end of the day, our team is 100% certified. We have a worst case, like a 6-month, call it remediation plan, where you have to get certified within 6 months of working at SwiftOtter. It's just what it is. And I think it would be good for all companies everywhere to have that type of a mentality that certification is required. It has to be there, and it's absolutely critical. So good job. Keep up the good work, and let's go forward. Quick, want to cover again this very, very critical aspect of scoping. And I find that scoping is one of the most capable aspects of Adobe Commerce. And to my knowledge of the big competitors of Adobe Commerce, BigCommerce is perhaps the only one that has matched this capability in at least some ways. Or it's not like a complete feature parity, and I don't think it needs to be. But there are very few competitors out there that have gotten even anywhere close to what Adobe Commerce has. So this is critical to you passing the test and you mastering these subjects. So I'm going to take just a couple of minutes and review this, and then we'll continue on. I want to double check my audio sound here. And that is funny. It was pulling in the wrong audio input. We'll change this around and fix this. So you should have my nicer microphone now. So like I said, I was a little bit flustered coming into this. Let's jump into how to make it happen. Okay, so we have call it these 5 levels of scoping: default, global, website, store, and store view. And I think we could argue that there is actually one other level in here, and that is the locked environment or configuration. So for us developers, when we can go into the command line, type bin magento config set, and then you type in the path to this configuration, what general, what store phone, something like that, and then you put like a phone number. But then you can also append one of 2 flags: lock-env or lock-config. And what that does is it saves this configuration in app etc env or app etc config, so that nobody past that can change it. There's no overriding it. There's no changing this whatsoever. And that you could argue that this fits in between default and global. So it's, of course, it's not default, but the cool thing with dropping in an app etc config is this configuration applies through the entire chain of from the integration environment staging out to production, well, and also development environments. It's synchronized across the board. And I can guarantee you there are questions like that on the test. Very important to look up and make sure that you understand how that works. Now, the lock environment, or the lock env, makes it so that it applies to the env file, which of course does not persist across environments. So you have two different options there. Locking the env option would be valuable for payment configuration, payment credentials. Generally speaking, there's no reason a merchant would ever need to touch those. But locking the config would be perhaps valuable when releasing a new feature, and you've built it around a feature flag, and there's no reason for the merchant to like flip this flag on and off. But development is working around this flag, and so in your testing or your integration environments, you would flip this on, but in your main branch, you would have that flipped off. So there's some value in that way. I'm trying to think. Obviously, some of like the store structure is stored in configuration, and but I can't think of off the top of my head other values outside of feature switches that would be probably stored in config. Although, I guess you could put the phone number and the address in there, but I think it would be best just to let the store administrator manage all that. So at the end of the day, I don't think there's as much of a use case for locking the config. But as we navigate past that, we have our website, which is generally feature switches, our store, which has no configuration or editable configuration in store configuration or in product configuration or category, etc. Like, it's kind of a non-entity when it comes to this hierarchy of scoping, but it is there when you go to manage stores. And basically the only thing you can specify there is the root category. And again, the case that you would use this in is you could have one store. Well, actually, that'd be like two stores and maybe a store view for each. And you want to, which would again, well, I'll talk about that in a second. A two store view, or two stores, a store view for each, and you want to have like a different mechanism of viewing or navigating products across those two different store views, i.e. domains. And that's what I'll talk about again in a second. So the thing to keep in mind is that products are visible. All the product URLs are visible on domain 1, which is under store 1, and domain 2, which is under store 2. They're all going to be the same. So for SEO, is that good or bad? I don't know. It probably is not ideal, but it's a trade-off because it does save you configuration. So at the end of the day, if you wanted to turn products on or off per domain, you would either use that at the store view level, which would be the visibility attribute, or you would bump it up to the website level, which would be the enabled attribute. And this is where the complexity comes in around the scoping, because as you are able to present a quality plan for these scopes, which is what these tests want you to know, and especially on Business Practitioner, you are helping the merchant utilize Adobe Commerce capabilities to its fullest, and that's what they're all about. I think it's relevant to say here, in my conversations with merchants, one of the things that frustrates them to no end is building out something that already exists in Adobe Commerce. And there's a lot of functionality that exists in this. And again, that's one of the values that you leverage by investing in your certification process here, is that you are able to fully grasp all the features that are there, and thus how to use them effectively. And if I could put a quick plug in here, that is one of the values that we bring in the training, the courses that we bring. Is it's not just about how can you just like barely squeeze through this and just barely pass. It is my goal that you, of course, completely excel and pass, but also that you learn the best practices in the process, while not like just taking 3 times the amount of time that it really would need to take in order to get certified, right? So it's kind of a balancing act there, but I want you to be equipped. And that's one reason that I am really excited about a new course that we are releasing here on April 10th. And I am pulling up the link. I forgot to do that here earlier. Right here. Let's see if this works. There we go. Center this window again. It's all thanks to that little issue that we're having. So we are starting with what does it take to get somebody completely up to speed on Magento. And of course, you get a badge out of it, and there's a really nice long ton of videos that is included with it. So I am really excited about this coming out April 10th, and it's going to be very helpful for anybody utilizing Magento, but especially those who are coming into it fresh. So let's jump over into our primary topic for today. And of course, feel free to ask any questions as you are working through this. I'd be more than happy to help. I think one of the challenges with this whole idea of certification is we get nervous. I know I do. And I don't know how many of you have had this experience, but my background was not always in computers. I mean, I've kind of been in computers in one way or another since I was 7 or 8, which it's a while for me. And I ultimately started writing code when I was 10 years old. And but there was a period of time for about 3, 4, maybe pushing 5 years that I wasn't doing much with computers or software development. And one aspect of that was was when we were building, when we were doing some construction. And me and actually a brother of mine had a construction business for a while. And that was, for the most part, a really great experience. And it was interesting because it's not like you could just kind of work on something in the background and then deploy it to production. If you're working on the outside of somebody's house or you're working on someone's kitchen, they kind of need that, or the outside of the house is necessary to be protected from rain. It's a little higher pressure in some ways, ironically. So when we part of what we did was we did concrete work, and I would not say we're the best at pouring concrete, but it was kind of fun, and we did, I would say, a decent job at it. Certainly put a lot of like you see the rebar, the metal that you put in there. We did good constructing it, but the actual finishing work, yeah, was I would say decent compared to what I've seen. It certainly wasn't like we were not artisans. They have not poured enough concrete to become artisans there. So, there is nothing like the feeling of hearing the concrete truck, the cement mix, or whatever you want to call it, driving down the road. They have this certain whine, this certain sound, and it seems like it was directly connected with my blood pressure. And now this even happened when I was working. We helped some other people out pouring concrete that they were truly artisans when it came to pouring concrete. It happened. They even said it happened to them. Like this idea, when this concrete truck shows up, it's like the pressure's on. You have X amount of time to work with this concrete, and if you don't, you are screwed. Yeah, that was definitely some pressure. So I liken that to taking tests. And my goal is to reduce that pressure as much as possible. And ultimately, the more you pour concrete, you're still probably going to have that feeling, from what I understand, but it's going to be less. There's less risks, there's less unknowns. I mean, even for the best, the project can go sideways. But at the end of the day, let me put it this way. You've seen those videos of them pouring like concrete floors, like the second floor up, and and all that scaffolding breaks and the concrete just pours down on the floor below. Yeah, that's a bad day. And so even for the most experienced concrete finishers, like I would think those people would be, accidents, problems still happen. So yeah, it's not going to ever be perfect. But let's talk about what does it take when we are going to sit down for this test. It's like the concrete truck is driving in, and we know that this time, the moment has arrived for us to take this test. I want to break apart these questions so that you understand how to successfully approach them, and that is going to be as easy as possible. Now, one thing I want to say before I say that is don't feel like a failure if you fail your first time of taking the test. Just chalk it up to being a practice test, if you will. That's probably the best way to look at it. Just a practice test. That's really what you need to think about as you're going into this. Hey, I'm just going to do my best. First take of this. I may fail. And if I do, oh, well, it is what it is. Now you have all information necessary to go past the second test. And I'm not talking about like copying the questions down. That would be cheating. I'm talking about uh, understanding the concepts and the ideas behind the test, how these questions are written. Now, if I can make your first attempt easier to take, now we have a winner. And that's what I'm hoping to do here in this conversation coming up. So, to prepare you, what type of questions are going to be on the test? And more importantly, how do we answer them? That's what we're going to be looking at here now. All right. The questions are first and foremost going to be practical. Now, the caveat here would be on the professional level exams. They are a little bit less practical, a little bit more memorization. Now, when I say practical, it's going to look something like this. I am pulling up our SwiftOtter website here, and we're going to take a look at some of the practice test questions in our test. So this one, I did not want to do the business practitioner. 1 second, I was going to pull up the professional developer, but it's all, I guess it ultimately is all about the same. 1 second here. Let me pull up professional developer. There we go. Start practice test. Take just a second. All right. Now I'm going to show you this. Wrong one. There we go. So this is a example of the type of questions that you will see on the test. There's going to be maybe a couple of differences. Adobe has only 3 answers on per question as opposed to 4. Our test still pretty much use 4. And part of the reasoning behind this is I want our test questions to be 10% harder than the real test, at least thereabouts. And it's kind of impossible to fully measure that. But if we're about 10% harder, then we have adequately prepared you. We shoot to have, say, 3 to 5 question pools, which is also more than what you would find on the test. My experience, you can kind of when I talk to people out there, call it out there in the field who do take have taken the test, and as well as my experience, it's you're gonna if you the second time you take the test, you're gonna see some overlap from the first test. Some people say that it's more on depending on the test. Some people say it's a little bit less. But ultimately, then if you were to take it a third time, you'll probably still see a couple of new questions. It's kind of like most of the questions, all the 100% are new on the first time you take it, of course. And then on the second time, you might consider like 50% new. And by the time you get to the third take, you're probably down to like 10 to 15, maybe 20% new on that third take. With our pools, they're all new every single time you take this test. But this is the type of questions you can and should expect to see. They're going to be practical. So in this case, you're integrating a Magento with another system and working on adding products to the cart via Web API. All customers coming through this channel are considered guests. Which post REST API, Web API call would you use to create an empty quote for such users? So you have to think through this list. Now, this is a difficult question because it's both practical and it requires having a good knowledge of what's going on here. Now, in this case, this comes back to, again, as always, tested. You can't cheat your way out of knowledge, and this is for sure the case. I believe the answer is V1 guest carts. Yeah, I believe it is, but I've actually not studied this in a really long time. So cart/mine, anytime you see mine means that it is is going to be pulling up the customer session. So that's not going to be a good answer. We can for sure eliminate this one out of our consideration. And I'm going to talk through what this looks like is further. But here's a couple of examples. A merchant has to sell a style of pants that has different sizes and colors. These items are manufactured and stocked in the warehouse before shipment. What product type should they use for this product? Now, I think each one of us would say configurable, which would be the correct answer based off of, again, our knowledge. But you'll see that there's a pattern here of a practical scenario. And then we have to figure out the correct answer, or even worse, the most correct answer, not the correct answer, the most correct answer. We Problems like this that they're trying to test are very complicated, and it is exceptionally difficult. We wrote these practice tests, we know, to come up with scenarios that, um, how do I say this, are concise enough to put into a question that's what, 3, 4, 5 sentences and then 3 answers. That's really tough. And so what the Adobe certification team has done is they try to whittle out all the details that don't matter, but sometimes they kind of do matter. And as we're coming in fresh into this, it's easy for us to add extra information into this process. We say, well, but they didn't think about this, or this was not in the question. And what I find over and over gets people into trouble is these assumptions. Well, I think they meant this, and so thus I selected this answer. But my constant, call it encouragement or suggestion, is don't make assumptions. If it's not specified in the question, read it again. If you don't see it again in the question, I don't really know what to say. Either way, it can be very difficult. So these questions are practical, and they're not always going to be easy. You will have questions like this one. You are reviewing vendor Magento module config di XML and see the below code. What does this code accomplish? All right, type name, structure, compiler. Okay. So now you have to figure out what in the world does this code do and how does this map out? I'll be honest with you. This is one of those examples where you probably will not find a question this difficult on the professional developer test, but you'll probably be surprised for a couple of them. They'll seem this difficult. This requires you have a good understanding of the whole dependency injection system, of Object Manager, of the DI.XML file, and then you're going to map that back into an answer. This is really good testing material right here. And there's a lot of people that would get this question wrong. So you get this question right, congratulations, good for you. However, expect this type of questions on the test. Prepare for this type of questions and let yourself be pleasantly surprised when you get to the test and you find out that these questions are few and far between. I hope they are, but don't plan on it in your case. So you're going to have 2 minutes per question. And you see at the bottom of our screen here, we have a ticker here. It says how many minutes per this question and how many total minutes left. So the idea is that this gives you a good amount of time per question it's kind of like your clock in the back of your ear that tells you, hey, am I spending too long on this question? And at the end of the test, it gives you your average time per question as well. So this comes together to give you a full suite of understanding as far as how you are going to do. It's one thing, you could go through this test and get a 90%, but maybe you're spending 3 to 5 minutes on a question. Well, of course, you're going to fail the real test. They are testing you not only in a knowledge domain, but how quickly that knowledge is accessed. Both of those. Well, then we get into the next issue of reading comprehension. Because it's one thing for us, me as a native English speaker, I've grown up with English. That's basically all I know. And I can barely eke out a few words in Spanish, let alone Hindi or French or German or Dutch or Mandarin or whatever. Like learning another language or English as a second language is difficult. And so this is also, you might argue, testing some of your English comprehension. Now, if you end up taking too long on a question, that doesn't mean that you have bad English comprehension. It just means that you probably want to invest a little more time in understanding is ultimately in your English comprehension. That's literally what it boils down to. So you have to read the question, understand what it's saying. You have to reach into your knowledge bank and try to figure out which answer maps to the best answer that you are aware of. Then you have to select it. And we're going to talk about strategies for how to actually proceed and take the test, which there's some good stuff there. But I want you to be prepared for what does it take. And one of the best ways to prepare is taking this practice test. Again, they're cheap. And that's the goal, is that they're super cheap. Just take it and see where you're at. I also want to call out that do not look at the answers at the end of the test until you are 100% ready to take the real exam. Once you're ready to take the real exam, feel free to run through a practice test, look at your score by objective, but then you can look at the answers on the test questions. When you look at those answers, write down the domain that it's talking about. And you say, oh, well, maybe like in this case, maybe I got the wrong answer here. So perhaps I need to spend a little more time with DIXML and try to figure out what's going on there. To be honest, this specific set of code here doesn't matter in the slightest. It has no value. But what it's talking about is, how does this impact the system? If you came across any other type declaration with an arguments and argument respectively node inside it, like, what is it going to do? How does this work? That's what is absolutely important. The actual matter on the question there's no value in it at that point. And so you want to look at the big picture when you review each one of these questions. But keep in mind, when you look at the answer, that entire practice test becomes almost worthless. It becomes worthless because now you know the answer. It's like, oh, okay, let's see here. Well, like, we could figure out what the answer is on this one. Okay, let's figure the answer out here real quick. Okay, so what does this code accomplish? We have our type is the reader, and we have our argument. This is for the constructor arguments. We are passing in the config compiler. So adds config compiler class the arguments array and reader. No, because this is for the constructor. It creates a new type object and calls a set compiler method. Nope. There's no magic method in this. It specifies which object should be used for the compiler constructor parameter. This would be the correct answer, and instantiates compiler class and injects a reader class. That would be precisely backwards. But so let's say then you got this wrong, whatever. Oh, good. You got it. Repertoire is good. Good job. You got this wrong or whatever. And then you look at the answers like, oh, shoot, that's the answer. So then you go through and take this test again. And then you're like, 3 is the answer. Boom, next one. 2 is the answer on this one. Boom, next one. 4 is the right answer on this one. Great. Okay. Well, guess what? That test is worthless because it's just like working through memorization at that point. You've memorized the answer, and you're not actually thinking about what is the right answer here. And so not seeing those, keeping those blinders on when you take these tests at the beginning keeps the vast majority of the value. You could get this question wrong every single time, and you wouldn't necessarily know it. Now, there is a key part of this, though, that will help your study. At the end of the test, there is a score by objective. And I'm going to just burn through this test here real quick. Probably incorrect answers the whole way through. Did you know that if you entered in incorrect answers, like chose D on every single one of these, you would end up with about a 25% score? Why? Because you're rolling the dice at that point. It's just kind of funny. Okay. We'll get through this. Almost set. Okay, confirm, just like the real deal here. Okay, yeah, 32% score. Yeah, see about what I say. All right, so you have the 23%. So we have a machine learning algorithm that evaluates your chance of passing. And I will be honest, it's not necessarily 100% accurate. So you take this with a grain of salt, but it's machine learning, so pretty cool. All right. So here's what's really, really important is that we have this pieces of information here, and this is what you really want to be focusing on. So you say, okay, well, that's out of order. That's funny. Take a screenshot of that. Make sure we get that dealt with here. Okay. So you're saying, wow, this is I see I did very poorly on layout and UI. Okay. What am I going to go do? and fix this, or Commerce Cloud or whatever. I'm going to go fix this, get this set, and I'm going to do a little more study there. And then you go back and take, if you end up with the same question pool again, excuse me, you're going to have a good, you're going to have a little bit better handle on this area. You have studied up for it. So that is the approach that I would highly recommend taking when it comes to these practice tests. Walk through it, take it like the real test, evaluate how you are doing here at the end of it. Wrong one. And say, okay, my score was 32%. That's not overly helpful. What's helpful is looking at your score by objective, and then you have the time per question. Again, if that time is high, 2 or 3 minutes, you got a problem, and you're probably not going to pass the test. Even if you get 90% here, but it's 3 minutes per question, you're not going to pass the test. Thus, these two together are a very big indicator as far as how you will do on that final exam, provided you have not looked at the answers. Now, question I do get is, how do I look at the answers? And that's down here. I have purposely hidden this to an extent. It's not like it is hidden. It's just not as obvious, because I don't want people just going and taking a look at the answers, because that completely annihilates the value of the practice test. Have you heard me say that enough? I think you have. So questions, breaking them apart. This is the type of questions you're going to have on the test. They're going to be highly practical, scenario-based questions designed to test your knowledge and mastery of each one of these subjects. That is what I wanted to talk about today. I hope you found that valuable. I'll stay on here just for a couple of minutes. If you have questions, I am more than happy to answer questions. If not, I will look forward to our final one of these conversations here in 2 weeks, where we will discuss how one actually goes about taking the test, and some strategies there, which are absolutely critical to being able to pass the test. So I'll wait just a second or two for any questions. If not, if there are no questions, I'll sign off, and certainly want to wish everyone a wonderful week. I forgot to say this here again. I was a little flustered at the beginning. We are here in the middle of spring in Kansas City, and I tell you what is my favorite season of the year. I've been on this gig where I've been walking 10 minutes every day, and boy, you couldn't get a nicer walk even like this morning. It was so nice. 40 degrees outside, 40, 50 degrees, somewhere in there. And it was just gorgeous. So yeah, spring is here. Great time. We want to be getting out and getting around, which ultimately hampers our study efforts. Yeah. Let's not hamper these study efforts. Let's keep kicking it. Great work. Thanks for joining, and we will talk to you in a couple of weeks.